Hey, everybody, welcome in. Welcome to the podcast. All right, we're going live here. We're going to get our guest over here as well on the Instagram live, but you can also hear him here on the YouTube live. So, welcome to the podcast. I'm very, very excited about this guest. This guy and I, we've been friends for goodness gracious, it feels like forever. But here we go. We're gonna see if we can get him over here on the Instagram. I'm very, very excited about it. It's gonna be really good. So, welcome, my friends. Am I live? And live. We're properly live here. All right, sweet. Let's get this going here. So, welcome. Good evening, my friends. Good afternoon. Good morning. Whenever you guys are watching this back, if you're watching live, hello. Welcome. All right, sweet. Looks like we're about to get the guest on here. So Brent, if you're watching here, go ahead and request to get in. Greetings, BadFast360. What is going on? Welcome in. But yeah, Brent, go ahead and request to be in the live video here on Instagram, and we'll get you live here, and we'll get going with this podcast. All right, let's do it. Let's get him in. And 3, 2, 1. We are going to make it happen. Is it doing it? Question. Did we do it? Did we do it? See what happens here. Welcome, Zach. Hey, Brent is on. Welcome.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you. You are A-okay.
Sweet.
You're in. You're on. How's it going?
Dude, it is going. It has been into the week being a teacher. Woo!
Definitely.
Man, good stuff. So, I mean, gosh, we started off the day. I had to play a hymn that I totally forgot that I had to play this morning at our assembly.
For sure.
It was Crown Him with Many Crowns.
Okay, yeah.
But totally forgot that was happening. So had to quickly look that up and make sure I was able to play it. And,
there you go.
No one really noticed. So
I guess that's good. For sure. Awesome.
And then, jumping right back into the way of things. I mean,
yeah,
that's kind of what I love about teaching.
For sure. So tell those of my followers who don't really know, like, what kind of school you teach at, like what it is, like a little bit more of your kind of teaching kind of experience and background.
Sure. So I teach at a little school called Ambleside of the Willamette Valley. The best way to describe it is it's a Christian school. It also is kind of classical, and it's private, but it's really not categorizable in like one of those three things.
For sure.
Kind of like a cross of all three of those things. They would not describe themselves as a purely classical school, and they would not really describe themselves as a purely Christian school, or like as what we might understand as a present day Christian school.
For sure.
So it follows the teaching methodology of a woman named Charlotte Mason.
Mm-hmm.
She was in the UK like a while ago. I think she was a contemporary of C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, Dorothy Sayers.
For sure.
Kind of around that time period. And she started up a bunch of schools, and her many years of study kind of brought about this different method, and it really flourished while she was alive and while she was kind of supporting it, growing it. But there's a lot of the way that the method works works, it requires a lot of attentive presence by the teachers, and by the people who are part of the school, and so it's not easy, and in many ways have that continual support. So it disappeared for a while, and then like in the last, I want to say, like 40 years, 40, 50 years, it's kind of slowly been coming back. It really started in the homeschool world. And then the organization that I'm with, Ambleside, they brought it into kind of the private school world. And yeah, now there's a bunch of schools throughout the country. It's now an international organization, so they are
awesome
in other countries as well. But yeah, it's a very it very much stems from a classical conception, but not using classical terminology, I guess.
Sure.
And like first and foremost, the most important thing is that the spirit is present in the which would lead to lifelong learning.
Definitely.
So I mean, that's just kind of. I mean, that's a super.
Kind of about that.
Sixth grade.
Yeah.
At this school, and I have 5 students. They're awesome, and yeah, I love going to work, and I love spending time with them, and watching as they grow in character, in knowledge, in good habits. I hope I'm giving them opportunity.
Don't know. Me and Brent have known each other for, it feels like forever, but it's been 6-7 years. We met actually at, basically, simply put, a summer program for the kind of school and the kind of teaching that I do, basically. The two of us, that's where we met. And we sat down at a piano and we played the piano, and this is how we've become friends for ages. And it's just it's spawned. But yeah, so anyhow, so welcome to the podcast. So you're doing some Shakespeare with your class? Is that what's going on right now, or?
Oh yeah. So our school puts on multiple Shakespeare performances.
Definitely.
And, this last week it was the high school, so they just did Twelfth Night, which was a blast. It was a ton of fun to watch them do that, and all of the high school students. There's not a lot of them. It's like a number of freshmen and then 1 sophomore. We're just starting our high school
for sure.
But their job was to pretty much do all of the work on their own. So they did pretty much all of most of the directing, most of the planning, all of the costumes, and the props. All of that was their work. And then through the process of the last month and a half, they put on this performance. And last week they did two performances of it, and it was just really great. And then the rest, so then they do it first, so then the rest of the school has an opportunity to kind of get excited.
Yeah.
They then get to go and do their own Shakespeare performance. And so that'll be, I believe, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th.
Definitely.
Are all going to do that Shakespeare production. And so my class is right in the middle there, and they'll be doing that as well. And we're going to be doing, I believe, a comedy of errors.
Okay, yeah.
Which is going to be a ton of fun.
Very cool.
So yeah, we're doing Shakespeare. It'll be crazy, but
yeah, it sounds about right. Very, very exciting though. Yeah, my class, we're reading through Henry V right now, and we've got this professor who comes in. His name is Dr. Corden. He comes and walks them through it. He gives good background because he's a doctor, he's a
Nice.
doctoral degree in like literature and in Shakespeare. And he comes and he talks and he gives
Nice.
historical background and cultural background. And we're talking about the chorus, how that's similar to Plato and Aristotle, how they would come out and they would say, "Oh, the muse of storytelling, come tell the story through me." And he's saying, "Oh, for a muse of fire." And he's having this chorus come onto the stage and paint the picture, set the scene for all of these
Yeah.
people jumping in and listening to the play. And it's funny because at the very start of that play, he talks about, especially in the chorus, about how, oh, this is just, if only we could bring you back to actually historically where that was and show you this play, this history there in France and in England at that time. It is really give you that picture. But bear with us as we're in this awful theater, even though it's one of the most expensive, well-made theaters of the time. So it's just like it's hilarious, like that context of it, kind of going back and understanding that. So having him has been a great resource. I'm trying to get my students to do Shakespeare in the Park. They're gonna like I'd like them to pick a scene, pick a speech, and just we're hoping to go to
That'd
like
be awesome.
downtown Kennesaw and just there's like actually like a little amphitheater there with like seats and like there's a little walkway around it. But I'm hoping to see some of my students kind of show up and do that at the end of the semester.
Nice. Nice. Yeah. That would be awesome.
Definitely. I think the biggest learning curve back tutoring, especially with CC, has been the Latin, because I haven't done Latin in ages. And I don't know if you're doing Latin at your school or if you're not, but it's
No.
yeah.
It's a bummer. Honestly, I think I miss Latin. I think if there's one thing that like the school that I'm teaching at could really benefit from, it would be an opportunity for these students to experience Latin. I think right now we just do Spanish.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's good to learn a practical language
Yeah.
like Spanish. But then there's something about opening up this incredibly deep world of literature.
Yeah.
That Latin does for you, right?
Absolutely.
And the history of words. And yeah, I miss it a lot.
Yeah, we're in.
And I know that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I just getting to go and travel Europe and getting to see like Europe and even the Middle East. I think one of the biggest things was the fact that because I had studied Latin, there was this whole written world on buildings and walls and relics that I could commune with. I could actually understand what was going on. Like it's literally like everything. When I was in Rome, every major building has something written on it that is like either a dedication or the person who built it or when it was built, but it's all in Latin. And so you have no idea unless you've taken a moment to study it, like what on earth is going on. It opens up a whole other world.
Definitely. No, we're in the Henley Latin at CC, and we're in Challenge. We're going through the first oration against Catiline by Cicero, and that's just been fantastic. And even from a literature standpoint of Cicero as an orator, of just like the way he had to, like he could spin words and the mastery he had of that language, and even bringing it to English, just how it's such beautiful literature was just it's kind of mind-blowing, but it's also just an awesome experience to sit back and go through it and like read through it, even for the students who are not studying Latin like at home, but having the opportunity to sit down during that session and just say, hey, this is where we're at, this is what we're looking at, and reading through it, and just the exercise of them all reading through the Latin, reading through the English as well. It's been like awesome to see. But it's like today there was a line which said, Cicero was talking to Catiline, he said, how can the sun provide you any warmth, and how can you breathe the air and enjoy it, knowing like what you've done and like knowing that people know what you've done? Just like how he spun that, just like from a narrative perspective, was just so rich. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think um, there's something about having to study Latin and where, um, like, all of a sudden you have a deeper appreciation for the concept of having to translate.
Yeah.
I mean, trying to translate Cicero's writing, or like Cicero's ideas, this incredible orator, right? This incredible thinker, and you're trying to put it in English when, I mean, the beauty and the depth of his writing was literally built into Latin, and it's just,
Yeah.
there's a real challenge there, and a beautiful challenge. I think that translators especially have a lot to work through, which is, I mean, thank God for translators.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for people who can take things and give us an opportunity. I mean, the fact that we have an English translation of the Bible, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, first it was German, right? But like,
Yeah.
you had to go through the German, but like that takes work.
Oh yeah.
But it's also incredibly beautiful, and
it gives you an appreciation for it, definitely. Like working through that
Yeah.
exercise of translating something.
Yeah. It's true. I guess I do miss having that challenge, I guess. That
Yeah.
like, I look forward to a time when I can open up that Henley again and do a little Latin.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. No, it's been such a refreshing thing for me to kind of get back into it and to refresh my mind, and because I'd spent so long just kind of working and just what I was doing professionally in kitchens, which I'm thankful for. I grew a lot, I learned a lot, you know. However, like when it comes down to like what I was looking like, what's fulfilling me, what's challenging me, where I'm growing now, the fact that like I was telling somebody else this the other day, like the fact that it took me leaving where I was in that comfort zone to get that 180 and to be where I am now, to do all these things that I'm doing, and to have consistently like be in school, be working at Starbucks, be working this job as a tutor, the podcast, like all the things I'm doing. I'm trying to train for this marathon. Like the fact that it took just in the uprooting of bringing me from there where I'm learning, both as a tutor and as a barista and also as a student. Like I am in a place where I'm constantly taking in information and I'm constantly learning. And it's a great way for me to model that for my students and for people around me. And it's been a huge blessing. It's definitely like a challenging blessing. And there are moments where it is just like, no sitting grindstone. However, so very much worth it. It's been huge just to be able to be in a place where I can grow, I can push myself, I can see myself moving towards something, and versus feeling like very stagnant.
Yeah. Well, that's so incredibly important. We sometimes get into this mindset that we just need to find a way of life where we can just survive, right? Or I just need, once I reach that, I'm good to go. And we get into that mindset, especially like in our idea of like, okay, I'm going to go off to college so that I can get a good job, right?
Yeah.
And once I've got the good job, I'm good. Life will just fall right into place or anything. But no, so much of life is a consistent pursuit of growth, right? It's a consistent. I mean, like you're a lifelong learner, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're either going to grow stagnant in that learning process, and life is going to get a little boring, or you're going to feel stuck, or you can choose to be a lifelong learner and continuously grow. Right?
Yeah.
And that's another one of the things I love about the school that I'm teaching at, is that we as teachers are constantly reminded and are constantly working on growing ourselves.
Definitely.
Right? And that our principal, her primary job is not necessarily just overseeing whether we're doing our jobs, or like being the head of the school, but she's also a mentor to each of us, right? And she both as a teacher and as a human being, right? Because I mean, we can't differentiate the two. In so many ways, who I am in the classroom as a teacher is built upon who I am as a person. And so if I'm not continuously growing as a person, whether that be in how I engage socially, or in how I take care of myself, or in how I am like critically thinking about things, or my spiritual life, like each of these things, if I'm not growing in these areas, then I mean, how can I expect my students to grow? And also how can I expect any growth anywhere to happen? Like if I'm not actively in the community being a part of that growth. And
Definitely.
so it's such a refreshing thing to be a part of a community where I am constantly challenged to grow, and that like there's almost like if you aren't growing, it's actually like it's kind of obvious, right? Because it's like, wait, what's going on? What's happening? Like, how can we get you going again? How can we reignite that desire to want to be better and to find a better self, but then also to continue to pursue a closer relationship with the Lord, and like that's huge. And
definitely
deeply thankful for that opportunity.
So, oh yeah, no, that's a big thing. I'm gonna itch my nose here a little bit. It's wonderful. It's very true that you constantly must be in a place of growth, especially as someone who's modeling that and teaching that. If I wasn't in that position, the opportunity to to tutor and to do so well would really not be worth right would not be worth like the long-term sacrifices that I'm trying to think of how to say that. It wouldn't be worth it to the students for someone to say, hey, you have to grow, and then also not grow. So if I'm trying to model that, sorry, I'm trying to figure out my lighting over here. It's a little too much.
Yeah, I'm a little hazy too, but
I'm
just going with it.
Yeah, I'm making it.
We just have. It was an incredible day today. I don't know if you can see. There's blue sky out there.
Oh, it's beautiful. We had a little bit of we had rain today.
I just don't want to close the window because it's just so gorgeous.
Oh no, it's beautiful. We had rain today up here. It was I got out of class, and as I'm getting in my car, it just starts pouring even more. And I drive home, and when I get home, it like lets up a little bit and starts to rain more calmly. But for a minute there, while I was trying to get home, it was intense. Quite a bit of rain. It was coming down. I was like, all right, take it.
Well, you got the northwest rain because it was absolutely gorgeous.
We just swapped,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's important, growth and learning, and I think that's been a big theme in general on the podcast and on recently just in my life. Like I've been talking to my buddy who runs his own business. I'm talking to you now as a teacher, as someone who's constantly learning and growing. It's like the idea of getting into a position where you can grow, you can push yourself, you can live intentionally and looking towards things you can do to better yourself, better your community, to work on those things I think it's very, very crucial. But yeah, it's definitely one of those your friends. You have to model, being better if you want them to improve and to grow. That's just how you have to do it. Because you can't say to someone, "Hey, you need to be a better person," and then you yourself not work to be a better person.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the biggest lies that we can tell ourselves, and we hear it all the time, and I mean, we're just kind of surrounded by it. There's a lot of negative bonding that happens over it. I mean, just this lie that like, oh, this is just who I am.
Yeah.
This is just kind of. I mean, just get used to this. This is is who I am. Just you'll just have to work with that. But like that's a huge lie to tell yourself that you can't become better.
Yeah.
Or that you can't become someone that other people enjoy spending time with, or that you enjoy spending time with.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
I know, like, it's easy to fall into that feeling. I mean, as an example, I used to always tell myself that I wasn't someone who was a good memorizer, like, or I didn't have the mind, the memory mind. I was never made to be a memory master, right? As CC, like, CC's famous thing, their memory master program. But like, I just thought that's just not me. And through the process of becoming a teacher, and especially through working at Ambleside and their heavy importance on the on paying attention and on giving your full attention, really opened my eyes to the lie that I was telling myself, that for some reason, like, I can't remember things. I'll always be that one who forgets my keys everywhere. Like, just expect that Brent's stuff will be left in some odd location. Yeah. But no, it actually stemmed from an issue that is very much mendable, and it's that I give a very scattered attention to many of the things that I do. Yeah. And I have not developed a good habit of giving my full attention to what is in front of me, right? And so I had a very negative outlook on it, in that, I'll never be good at this result, like having this. I'll never be good at memorizing things. Well, it's like, well, of course you can't be good at memorizing things if you don't give them your attention. Yeah. And really, really, what I had to do is develop a habit of attention. And I'm still growing. I have so much growth to do in that area, but it's just a recognition that I'm no longer telling myself that I am stuck in that hole. Definitely. Or that that's who I am and I'm always going to be that way. But it's rather a recognition, no, it's just that I've developed poor habits, and one of those poor habits is to not give my attention to things, like my extended attention to things, or that it's the thing that's in the corner of my eye that I'll give my attention to, rather than what's in front of me. Yeah. And as I developed that habit and that ability to give full attention, my memory is beginning to grow. And it's allowed me to be able to read books more clearly, to be able to understand what's going on. I was blown away by my students' ability to narrate. We do this thing. There's a point in which we'll stop, and then we'll say, and then I'll ask one of the students, "Okay, Fianna, tell back." Yeah. And she'll go back, and the stuff that we just read or just talked about. Yeah. Using to the best of her ability, using the author's language, structure, and ideas. Yeah. Tell back what we just read. Yeah. Right? And that was a terrifying concept to me, because I mean, my ability to remember things was so poor. Yeah. And so here I am trying to teach something that I felt like I was completely incapable of doing. Right? Oh yeah. But it was recognition that it's not that I could never do it, but I hadn't developed the habits to be able to do. Definitely. And so there's been a lot of work in my life especially in the last few, for one, but then also to pay close attention to my students' narrations, because I need to know when they're actually not narrating the text and they're just filling in their own thoughts and ideas into what's going on. But I can't do that if I can't remember it either. Yeah. Me to bear good fruit in this area, that I can that I can retain things. I can remember the things that I have on my body.
Yeah.
Like, do I have my keys? Do I have my...
Yep.
Or all the way to text that I just read.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely. That's one of those things that it does take practice. And I think that historically, I, in some ways, had a similar experience too. I think that when I was younger, I would more just kind of give the attention to what caught my eye over here or what caught my ear over here. You know, what thing was the loudest, quickest, most immediate change in my environment. And I think it led to a couple times where I'd have a conversation with someone and I would just be talking with someone and something would happen out of the corner of my eye and I would just kind of stop like in the middle of conversation, even in the middle of talking, like stop and just kind of turn and look at or listen to what may have just happened. And then like it took that practice as you get older of like being present, being there with people. And I think that one of the biggest learning curves there for me has been working, especially with the Starbucks job, when I get on like a headset and talk to the people on the speaker in drive-through, of just like being very present in that conversation and listening and orating it back and saying what they've what they've got, asking if they have have the order correct. And it's been like a practice there that's helped me a little bit with going into CC and going into that discussion, because we'll go into our talks about Plato and about virtue. And this week we broke down what are some things that might affect foreign policy, in especially in World War I and World War II in relation to America. And we kind of broke down like what are some causes and some parts of those policies that, they were that might have affected that or that might have caused the policy to be put in place. So in that conversation and so working through being present in that, um, that's kind of been my growth there, for sure. But I think everyone has to work on it. I think that there's no one person just like instantly knows how to pay attention and be present with everything every moment of every day. You know,
Yeah.
um, a lot of times with my schedule, it's just the next fire. It's like, what am I, what's the next thing that needs my attention? What's the most immediate thing that needs my attention? Things of that nature of like, where do I need to go from here? And I think that it's good to have a plan. It's good to be aware of what else is going on. Like, can I think about thinking ahead? Like, I'm thinking ahead about like what's happening tomorrow a little bit, like where I'm going to have to be, like what I've got to do, when I have to be at work, what school I have to do, things of that nature. And just kind of trying to be aware of that and be aware of where my time is and what's going to, and am I being productive with that time? And I think being so busy has kind of taught me by necessity a little bit of the time management side of it, and I'm still growing in that as well. But I think that's a huge thing of just like being present in where you are and like being also aware of what's coming down the road. But it can be difficult, especially when you're in like a difficult place to be present. As a teacher, you're going to be dealing with, and I'm sure you've had a little bit of this, and I've had too. We deal with students who have maybe have some anxiety, or maybe they freeze up when they're about to give a presentation, or they might have just personal stuff on their life. It's just really tough. And so like, bless you, but like being present,
Sorry.
it's okay, but being present in that moment is, I think, really crucial for them, and people will notice and like they'll point out like, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, think about what being attentive does to the people around you. I mean, it's your job at Starbucks is a great example of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, it means a lot to a customer when they know you are giving them your full attention, right? And that's huge. Like, when that connection is made, there's so much of a higher quality interaction going on.
Definitely.
Right? And it can almost be overwhelming to another person who's never actually experienced that before.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, one of the things that actually was kind of shocking to me as a teacher is, I mean, I have some students that get really uncomfortable when I give them my full attention.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's something overwhelming about that. Like, oh, whoa, like he is completely paying attention to what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, like, and that speaks volumes. And at first it can be intimidating, but there's a level of
Absolutely.
because you're giving your full attention. And it's in that like a true healthy relationship can form, that really is much more difficult to form when you don't show the attention that is required for that.
Yeah.
Like the fact that I am encouraged as a teacher to speak into my students, especially in moments of their weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I have the opportunity of saying, okay, class, continue reading this. So and so, let's go out in the hall and let's just talk. Let's just sit down and let's just talk. Like, how'd that go? Like, what happened? Like, what's going through your mind right now? I really want to know how you're because it's a really hard time there. What can we do about just like a correctional moment, but rather just a mentorship moment, right? Fully to be present with you. One of the lines we have at our school is, "It is good to be me here with you."
Definitely.
Right? And like that's the emotional and like mindset that I need to be in with my students at all times. Like especially when they're in moments of weakness or when they're in moments of failing. Like no, like those are the exact moments where it is
absolutely
so good that I am here and it is good for me to be here with you.
Yeah. And it's less, like you said,
full attention to that moment. Yeah.
And it's less like you said, it's less about the correction, like pulling them aside and saying, hey, like, I see you here. I see you where you're at. I acknowledge where you're at. You know, how can we work to make you your personal best and to empower you where you're at? It's more about that for sure.
Because in more ways than not, like they recognize when something hasn't gone right.
Oh yeah.
Right? And I mean, it's actually a natural tendency to to not want to do the wrong. And when you have a student who makes a mistake or does something that's inappropriate or has a moment of weakness or gets really angry or frustrated or tense, I mean, pulling them out and just saying, hey, it's okay. It's okay. I know where you're at. Take a breather. It's all right.
Yeah.
Let's figure out what's going on, because this is good. We found an area where you need to grow. Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, like, absolutely.
Imagine if we just ignored that. Like that'd be terrible.
Oh yeah. And then
how terrible of a person would I be if I just ignored the fact that you were having, and yet no, this is fantastic. Like you just showed us an area where you need to grow, and now we know, right?
Yeah. No, that's huge. Like being aware of it and being present. I'm actually gonna get a drink of water real quick here, but definitely want to drive that point home. I think that if we ignore when someone else is at a point where they need growth, and then we ignore when we're at a point of growth, and we're still talking about growing and learning, which is a big thing as a teacher. You're always talking about those things. You're always talking about, we're going to learn this today. We're going to approach this new thing today. We're going to review. We're going to renew. Like, look at these things we're talking about. And then if we say that, but then when it comes time to be present in a moment of growth for any of us, for ourselves, for our students, for fellow teachers, and we just kind of don't acknowledge that and don't work through that, we end up in a position where it's very, very difficult to say those things and to practice what you preach.
Yeah. Well, and you can't do it unless you're fully attentive.
Yep.
To what's going on. And that was really hard when I was first starting teaching, because it was really hard. Like there was no way I could be fully attentive to the classroom because I was learning how to teach. I had no idea how to lesson plan. So my lesson plans were just a complete they were totally all over the place. I was so lost. I was having to learn how to teach, so I couldn't be fully present in my teaching and in my guiding and leading of the classroom. And so there was, I feel like I'm finally starting to get to a point where I'm in the classroom, so that when there are moments of weakness like that for my students, I can be like, hey, here we are. Okay, I know now where we need to work, and this is good. This is awesome. Like I see the struggles you're having. We can work through them and figure something out, and that can only happen when you're fully present in the room.
Yeah, absolutely. That's huge. So it's one of those things we're talking about growth. We're being present in growth. It's fully present. Because if you're not paying attention, and then something happens and you miss it, and then you don't have the opportunity to model that for yourself or for other people and to say, hey, like,
and
we
then
can.
it reinforces that poor habit.
Yep.
Right? Like that slight ignoring it or missing it, all of a sudden it's that one slip up. It's kind of like the addict, right? When like it's that one little moment that you're not giving your full your full mind in it, and saying, yeah, no, I'm not going to participate in that, and I'm actually going to fill my life with other things. That one little slip up is huge, right? It pulls you right back in. It's the same way with habits and trying to change habits and trying to grow in other ways. I mean, it's being on top of every one of those little things and saying, oh, there it is. Let's work with that list of things. Like saying, nope, we gotta figure that out. We gotta figure that out right now.
Definitely.
It's good.
Oh,
it's
yes.
a good thing.
Absolutely. So that's huge. I may have showed this before. This is my Shakespeare book. It's 153 years old. It is an old book. It's in very, very good condition for it being that old. It's still, all the pages are still there, still in very good condition. Binding is still very, very good. So it was taken very, very well taken care of for throughout the time that it was.
153. So we're talking like 1870s.
It was this old. But like the fact that I have a little piece of history, and so whenever I go to read Shakespeare, whenever I go to read, Macbeth or Henry V or wherever we're at in the class, or even just on my own, I get to like who else held this book? Who else had this little story of this 150 some odd years? Like, it was before my grandparents were born. It's been around for twice as long as, or even more than, like my granddad, and 3 or 4 times as long as my dad, and the same with like my mom, and definitely it's been around about 6 times as long as I have. So it's 153 years, and I'm at 25, so it's way old. It's got a history of lives. It's if you're talking generations, it could be as many as 6 generations. Well, maybe not 6 generations, maybe more like 4 or 5. But just the fact that it's been around for that long is just huge.
So what would you say to someone who said, well, I mean, it's so old, isn't that just an outdated piece of literature? Isn't that just a waste of our time? Shouldn't we be focused and looking at things that are in our present time? What would you say to that?
There's a great quote: to remain ignorant of that which happened before you were born is to remain always a child. And that was by Cicero. And first off,
Cicero, there he is
again. Yeah, there he is. First off, the fact that it's
old.
Yeah.
Of course you can say that.
The fact that this has lasted so long and is in such good condition, and the fact that there are multiple prints and reprints and publications. republishings of books like this.
Republication.
Yeah, republications. There we
Probably.
go. So one of the words. But like the fact that this is made into films and theater and drama, and it's adapted, and the fact that it's stood the test of time. The fact that there are still people studying it. There's a professor that works today that I work with on a weekly basis. Who's a professor of Shakespeare. The fact that those are some simple reasons as to why, but also the history of it. The fact that Shakespeare is more than 150 years old, right? But like the fact that it's even older than this print of this book, and even at that point, it was important. It's got rich history. I mean, West Side Story comes from Shakespeare. So many there's been so many film adaptations. There's been at least two Henry V.
Many argue that The Lion King.
There's been an argument about that.
Yeah.
But like, so it's huge. So many people. That's kind of my argument. Is it stood the test of time. People are still reading it, still talking about it. It's still being created and printed and sold, to this day. So that's one of the things I would say about that is it's old, but it's history. It's still relevant. It's still great literature. You're looking at stories that have stood the test of time and stories that we can still tell and things that we can read. And he pushed boundaries, like Shakespeare pushed boundaries. He created his own words. He even in Henry V, he created a mockery of the actual new the new Colosseum or the new theater that they made for the plays. He said, "Oh, this is but just like an outhouse, basically sitting out." And just the fact that he was pushing those boundaries. Oh, have I gone? Am I? Oh,
you have disappeared.
Hold on, I'm back. magically back. I think I just flipped the camera around. But the fact that's what I would say about that. And I guess any book that is still around today, we still read today. I've got a collection of works, ancient literature from. And what's great about it is it's from all across time. I'm actually gonna go ahead and grab it. And it's not as old as this book, but it's a great book.
Love good books.
It's actually in worse condition, so maybe it was a little bit more well loved, but it's masterworks of literature, and it has ancient Greek and classic. It has English writings. It has Virgil. It has Middle Ages writing. It has Greek and Roman. It has Renaissance writing, and just the fact that it is such a huge collection of writings from a huge collection of time, and old. Oh yeah, some of the works in here are ancient. The first one is Homer's Odyssey. Then you have soft Greek works, Renaissance work. Dante's in here, the Divine Comedy. But it is a really wonderful collection of these literature. And I'm so thrilled and blessed to be able to have my hands on it because it's history. It's even the book itself has a history, the physical, book, where it's been. I think that's huge. And I've been reading in my history class some ancient texts about the Silk Road. There's actually a document that we have that is about this tablet, and I think it's from the continent of Africa, and I don't know for certain. But it's just this ancient writing, and it has the actual pictures of the actual tablet in there, and it's got some rough translations of kind of what that means in English, and it's just really awesome to see. So I don't know. I think that's important because, simply put, to put a long answer to your short question, much shorter, to just say back to that quote from Cicero: "To remain ignorant of what happened before you were born is to remain always a child." And we talked about growth, and we're talking about growth in this podcast and other ones, and in particularly in relation to us as teachers and modeling that for students, for people around us. So I think that's huge when it comes to ancient literature and even more recent literature. We talked in my class about the importance of story. Wonderful words create wonderful worlds, was what we came up with today. We had them basically. I said, we're going to go to the whiteboard. It's going to be free form. Just put some words up there that come to your mind. just any kind of words. It started out with one person said hey, one person said like blue, and then it got into more advanced words like void and deep, and it got into even like um, so many and funny words. They did supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and then they did um, salivate, and they did more scientific. Like it went all over, and it was wonderful just to have them like sit there and just spend time just putting words up there. And then I said, now create a poem with just a 2-line poem with those words. We were talking about voice today, and it was awesome to see them kind of like light up and just like create story, because the importance of story and of history and of literature is about understanding culture, understanding language is part of that as well. And education is in one part education because it's important to be educated to know things, but it's also, excuse me, about culture and about understanding where you are and where you stand in the world and where other people stand and what things you can do to relate to these people, and what common stories do we have. I mean, we all know, for the most part, we all know who Shakespeare is. We all know who, Plato is. We have common stories. And if you have common stories, then you can help, talk to people and have a common ground and say, this is where I am. This is how we can grow. We'll be like Odysseus, or we'll be like Henry V. And given these examples from this literature and these common stories and common language is a way to kind of invoke that and have that conversation.
Yeah, I think a word that might encapsulate what you're trying to say there is like a tradition.
Absolutely.
Right? There needs to be a level of tradition, and if like all good, like I mean, I was having a conversation with someone this and we kind of we kind of came we that like all good literature and all good writers learn from the past.
Yeah.
They've just taken these like they're really good thieves. And
yeah.
They've mastered the art of using great ideas and thoughts of those who've come before them, and just maybe adding just and so there's power in a tradition. There's a common voice.
Yeah.
And can do and share in, and a foundation to be able to grow off of. And I think I've been growing more and more, especially in the last year, most definitely, in my appreciation for tradition, both in my but also in my intellectual journey as well.
Definitely. Yeah, tradition is huge.
Like almost, yeah, like you need. I mean, and we all live with a tradition, acknowledged it or not. There's traditions in our households. There's traditions in our everyday life. You been built into the whip on a Monday.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
That you do on a Monday.
Yeah.
And you don't way that you wake up and the way that you go to bed. And I mean, we have these traditions built into our life, whether we acknowledge them or not, and they affect the type of people that we encounter and spend time with, and the way that we relate to them. And yeah, like we are creatures of tradition. And the more and more we distance ourselves from those traditions, I think the more and more we lie to ourselves about what kind of people what kind of creatures we are.
Definitely.
In that we rely so heavily upon those who've come before us, and upon the things that we do on a regular cyclical basis.
I mean, yeah, even down to simple things like traditions of eating in our country, especially like 3 meals a day, like breakfast and dinner. So much is built on that. Restaurants are built on that. There are breakfast restaurants, there are lunch restaurants, there are dinner restaurants, there are things that do all three. There are things of that nature, even as simple as that. There is the what's it called? Like the clock. and the tradition of time and of timekeeping and of time management all kind of spawned
Yeah.
from that. So we've actually almost gone a full hour, which I think is Instagram's limit. It tells us we have 1 minute and 51 seconds remaining. And it feels like we just started. It always feels like we're talking to you. But I guess we should wrap it up then.
I know, right?
It's wild. We've talked about a little bit today. For those that are going to be watching it back, is we talked about tradition. We talked about education. We talked about being present in the moment. We talked about the importance of literature and of culture and of and those things in relation to tradition and to education, and the importance of just simply being present. If there's a takeaway for anybody watching this afterwards, work on that. Work on being present. I know I need to. And Brent said he works on that as well. We're all growing, constantly looking to grow and to learn. Nobody's perfect. So I think we'll have to wrap it up there. We've got 1 minute remaining. So I will say thank you so much for joining me, Brent. It was an absolute pleasure. We'll see how the playback is here on YouTube and on Instagram. I think there was a couple times where there's a couple breaks up. So I know that I flipped my camera around. And so we'll see how the playback goes. I may need to kind of go back into the YouTube studio at some point and just see how it looks. But I'm excited to share this with everybody, and it's been awesome. We're having you on again for sure because this is such an awesome talk, and I love talking with you. 30 seconds. All right. So thanks for watching, everybody. It's been wonderful. We will see you all soon. I will go ahead. I'll just link Brent's stuff. You can go follow him. He's got on his Instagram, especially. He has got some great thoughts. A really good resource of mine, and I'm excited to see where he's going to go from here. But with that being said, at 10 seconds left, we will see you on the flip side. Peace out. High five.
Peace out.
There's an end button. Did it. And we're going to end here on YouTube as well. We'll see how it all kind of plays out. Peace out.